You are not safe. Look around you. You think technology is the biggest threat. That's a misanalysis. The threat isn't the machine, it's its predictability. You drown in data. You scream to be seen. You publish your pain, your joy, your routine. You believe this is authenticity. In reality, it's a sign of submission. It's an open invitation to the predator. Machiavelli wouldn't be frightened by the algorithmic surveillance of 2026. He would smile. He would be amused by the ease with which humanity surrenders to control, trading autonomy for dopamine. He would see a hierarchy where dominance belongs to those who cannot be read. You are being dissected. Every click, every emotional reaction, every late-night search builds a more precise profile than your own self-knowledge. Your consistency has made you an easy target, prey fattened by routine. You think visibility equals power. It's the opposite. Visibility is the price you pay for being a puppet. Your psyche is under attack. It's not depression, it's dissolution. You are suffering from a psychic infection. The system not only predicts your desires, it manufactures them. Your reptilian brain is being hijacked by digital parasites. You are reacting to external stimuli, like a lab rat programmed to pull a lever. Your shadow is not integrated. It has been outsourced. You fed it weakness, allowing the fear of being ignored to become its driving force. The result, possession. You are operated on from the outside. You try to be virtuous, to be productive, to be happy. That's irrelevant. The world is not a just environment. It's a wicked one. Virtue without strategy is merely an invitation to ruin. Your ego is being devoured. You are allowing the autonomous shadow, fueled by external validation, to consume your ability to act. You have become noise, an easy-to-discard piece of data. The comfort of ignorance is over. You don't need to self-help. You need a doctrine of survival for an era that has become hostile to human autonomy. It's not about being smarter. It's about becoming Machiavellian, not the prince of the Renaissance, but the strategist of the digital dark age. You need to stop signaling weakness. The only unfair advantage that remains is unpredictability. Power doesn't belong to the signal. It belongs to the void. The void is where the algorithm fails, where the predator finds no warmth. You must become the glitch static in the system, the error they can't explain. I'm going to give you the blueprint for this void. It consists of 13 psychological laws, brutal adaptations for a world ruled by silicon and surveillance. They're not meant to make you happy. They're meant to make you invulnerable. Notice, once you see the strings, you can't go back to being the puppet. We will begin to complete dissolution of your predictable self. Machiavelli wrote, "Men are so simple and so driven by immediate needs that whoever deceives will never fail to find someone who lets himself be deceived." In 2026, the deceiver is not a prince. It's the algorithm. He knows who you want, what you buy, and who you hate. He knows this because you consistently feed him your weakness. You are predictable. You react to the bait. You click on the bait. You argue on the topic. You are building a data profile that makes you infinitely manipulable. The first order of survival is annihilate prediction. Become an algorithmic ghost. This doesn't mean isolation. This is retreat. And Machiavelli never retreats unless it's a trap. This means sabotaging the established pattern. If the system demands consistency from you, you must become erratic. You must feed the system false data. Engage with content you despise. Buy something useless and return it. Silence your location not out of paranoia, but strategically. When you can't be profiled, you can't be attacked. This principle is even more lethal in a social context. People in 2026 are obsessed with labels. They want to put you in a box. Are you alpha or beta? Rich or hardworking? Right or left? Reject the box. Be a walking paradox. One day you're the center of gravity, the focus of the party. The next day, you're cold, distant, unreachable. You quote philosophy in a street fight and use slang in a board meeting. That's not confusion. It's war camouflage. When people can't decipher it, they become consumed by obsession. They waste mental energy trying to decode your pattern, while they burn calories trying to understand who you are. You're 3 moves ahead, dismantling their defenses. Consistency is a sentence of ruin. It makes him replaceable by AI. It makes him a target. Be the glitch, be the error message in their mental programming. When they expect you to go right, you don't go left. You simply disappear. We live in an economy of outrage. Your anger is a commodity, your offense is monetized. Every headline is designed to hijack your amygdala and ignore your logic. Machiavelli would identify this weakness immediately. He would see a generation without emotional skin. You provoke them, they bleed. You insult them, they type a paragraph. You ignore them, they spiral. Machiavelli said, "He who is the cause of the power of others ruins himself." When you react to someone, you transfer power to that person. When you become enraged by a provocation, you are funding their relevance with your attention. In 2026, the ultimate dominance move isn't about winning the argument. It's about looking at the argument, looking at the person yelling, and feeling absolutely nothing. This is the armed gray rock. You become such a cold, uninteresting surface that manipulation slips away. Imagine a colleague trying to sabotage you. He spreads a rumor. He tries to pinpoint you in a meeting. The old you would defend himself, raise his voice. The Machiavellian you stare at him. You maintain eye contact for 3 seconds longer than is comfortable. You don't blink, and then you return to your work without saying a word. You treat it like background noise, like an advertisement. Pop-up, you don't argue with a pop-up, you close it. This destroys people. It breaks their psychological framework because they need your reaction to validate their own existence. By denying that reaction, you're not just ignoring them, you're erasing them. In a world where everyone shouts, "Look at me," the man who says nothing is the loudest thing in the room. Silence is not empty, it is heavy. It is laden with answers they are afraid to hear. Use apathy as both shield and sword. Let them exhaust themselves trying to get a reaction from you. And when they're tired, breathless, desperate for any kind of recognition, that's when you smile, a cold, clinical smile, and walk away. Everyone in 2026 believes they are the main character. Social media has trained humanity in a state of terminal narcissism. They don't seek connection, they seek an audience. Machiavelli would exploit this ruthlessly. You don't try to impress people with your achievements. You don't talk about your story, nobody cares. You don't show them who you are. You show them the version of themselves that they want to be. If you're dealing with a man who considers himself a genius, you don't prove you're smarter. You ask questions that allow him to perform his genius. You let him strut around. You become the perfect surface for his ego to reflect. Why? Because when someone sees their ideal self reflected in your eyes, that person becomes addicted to you. They don't love you. They love how they feel when they're around you. Machiavelli wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you truly are." In 2026, you must heal this appearance for each individual target. This isn't being fake. It's interface design. You're designing a user interface for the human in front of you. To the insecure boss, you are the loyal, slightly less intelligent soldier. To the chaotic lover, you are the rock that anchors them. To the rebel, you are the co-conspirator. You change, you adapt, you mirror. And the danger, the dark beauty of it, is that while they're looking in the mirror, admiring their own reflection, they don't realize you're studying them. You're learning their triggers, their insecurities, their vanity. You're collecting the data that will allow you to dismantle them later, should it become necessary. Most people try to impress. Most try to be accepted. This is a fundamental miscalculation. It's an invitation to the predator. You're signaling weakness. Your reptilian brain is scheduled for the prey. You think you're living in the 21st century. Your operating system is still stuck in the savannah. Your primitive hardware only recognizes two things: dominance and submission. It operates through fear triggers and immediate reward. And by 2026, the algorithm will have become the most efficient hunter humanity has ever known. The system doesn't care about your soul. It only cares about your predictability. You are a battery of emotional energy. When you react to provocation, when you click on outrage, when you defend your honor online, you are simply confirming that your reptilian brain can be hijacked by an external stimulus. You are proving to be a puppet. You are transferring your vital energy to the master of the digital hierarchy. Your anger is someone else's currency. Your indignation is their fuel. The predator modern doesn't need physical strength. It needs your unfiltered attention. It needs your signal degradation. The need to be seen, to have an audience, to be the main character, as discussed in Law 3, is the biological manifestation of a deep insecurity. It is your primitive system crying out for belonging and approval to avoid exclusion. Territory. You submit to external validation because your inner core is in dissolution. The horror isn't just in the outside world. The horror is in shadow. Jung saw that the unconscious is not a passive repository of weaknesses. It is an active power. His shadow, not integrated, is devouring your ego. You fed her for years everything you denied in yourself. The drive for power, the necessary cruelty, the desire to dominance. You tried to be good, kind, patient. The result? A shadow. It grew autonomously. What you see as their sensitivity or their soft heart is, in fact, the shadow projecting her own weakness onto the world. She demands attention, not as a form of healing, but as a way of possession. She uses her vanity and her fear of being ignored to force him to signaling weakness constantly. You're not sad, you're infested. Your autonomous shadow manifests itself as the tyrant archetype in miniature, demanding that the world bow to his need for attention. But this tyrant is weak. He's a crybaby who uses narcissism as paper armor. When you become reactive, when you pathetically defend yourself against petty insults, you are allowing your devouring shadow take the wheel. You are being driven by your own unexamined darkness. This internal fragility is the threat reel. That's why you are Socket the Predator. Whether it's a surveillance algorithm or a manipulative coworker, doesn't need to break through your defenses. You take them down yourself. They just observe. They expect you to expose yourself emotionally, to become predictable, and to submit to the validation loop. The man who does not know his own shadow is doomed to ruin. He is a puppet who thinks he's pulling his own strings. The psychological warfare strategist doesn't see people. He sees the architecture of vulnerability, and his architecture is compromised from the foundation up. You must understand that the war in 2026 is a silent war. Your enemy is not attacking your financial assets. He is attacking your psychic coherence. He wants you to remain a reactive, predictable animal, consumed by your own vanity. The only way to survive is through a voluntary dissolution of your reactive self. You must eliminate a socket that's inside you. The comfort of ignorance is over. The path to power is not enlightenment, it is coldness. It is controlled chaos. You need to reverse the hierarchy. You need to stop being the reflection and start being the mirror. You need to arm your shadow and put her to work, not to devour him, but to protect him. Territory, your ego. You must use human weakness, yours and others, to ensure an unfair advantage. We'll begin with Law 4. The only thing more powerful than a well-told lie is a truth that no one can prove. Honesty is a social disease in 2026. It's the biggest indicator of weakness. Being transparent means providing the instruction manual for your own destruction. The world doesn't reward bare merit. The world rewards calculated performance. Machiavelli taught us that it's better to be feared than loved, if we can't be both. In the digital age, the equivalent is, it's better to be an enigma than an open book. Transparency is the enemy of dominance. The world demands that you define your position on everything. They want your political label, your moral opinion, your philosophy of life. They want to put you in a box so they can predict your next move. They want data to feed the control machine. His law is to refuse to be defined. You must cultivate active ambiguity. Be a double agent in your own life. Don't lie outright, that's amateurish. Instead, tell partial truths that, when combined, create a picture that is useful to you but useless to the other person. Predator. When questioned about your wealth, talk about the pleasure of a simple life. When questioned about your morals, quote a philosopher who advocates brutal pragmatism. When people try to decipher your intentions, you should provide contradictory clues. The goal is simple: to maintain uncertainty. Uncertainty paralyzes your enemies. They waste time trying to understand who you are, consuming precious mental resources. They cannot attack what they cannot identify. They cannot pierce what is constantly changing. The reptilian brain, the opponent's perspective, short-circuits when faced with this paradox. A man who is always predictable is an easy target. A man who is a saint one day and a demon the next is a threat that demands hesitation. Hesitation is his unfair advantage. This extends to your digital communication. Never allow your posts or texts to create a clear and consistent narrative. You post about your success, then post a harsh critique of the futile nature of materialism. If you express hatred for a figure, then express admiration for a tactic they used. You're not being confusing. You're being strategically opaque. You are forcing the predator. They're spending more energy profiling you than the hunt is worth. You become noise. You become a bug in the system. The doctrine of necessary untruth is the protection of your territory. You are building a fog of war around yourself. Let people misinterpret you. Let them create a version of you that is convenient for them. While they are fighting against this, puppets on paper, the real truth is you're free to maneuver in the shadows. Real truth is meant to be used, not shared. The need to prove that you are competent, intelligent, or strong is a destructive addiction. It makes you a slave to expectations. A submission. It's not just about bowing down. A submission, it's about accepting the burden of being the best, the fastest, the most capable in every situation. If you are the most competent, the burden is always yours. Parasite, it will identify you and drain your resources. You will become the unpaid problem solver. You will become the fulcrum for the weak. And while you are carrying their burden, they are free to plot against you. Machiavelli knew that true power lies in controlling the efforts of others, not in exhausting one's own. You must master the art of selective incompetence. It's not about being genuinely stupid. It's about knowing when and where to demonstrate a calculated failure. Let others think you're incapable of tasks you don't want to do. If a colleague tries to push a tedious job on you, make such a gross and irrelevant mistake that they'll never ask you for that task again. Feign ignorance about a specific technology that's draining everyone's energy. This is an energy conservation tactic. You are forcing the parasite, looking for another victim. Most importantly, the selective incompetence, it's a form of camouflage. The predator, he doesn't hunt the slowest gazelle out of laziness. He hunts it because it's the easiest. But if the slowest gazelle is actually the predator waiting to ambush, the game changes. When you signal that you are slightly overwhelmed, slightly less capable, expectations decrease. Your enemies lower their guard. They consider you harmless or irrelevant. They don't see you as a threat. Has hierarchy, and it's at that point when they underestimate you that you have the unfair advantage. You are free to accumulate resources and information without their oversight. You are free to observe while they fight amongst themselves to prove their superiority. Predator, the one who appears distracted or weak, is the most dangerous of all. Use weakness as a shield. Use underestimation as your sharpest weapon. Don't accept the burden of total competence. Let others drown in their own expectations. The digital society demands that you are always available. Availability is submission. If you respond to every message instantly, if you show up at every event, if you're always on the radar, you're telling the world, I'm accessible. My time is of little value. Power lies in scarcity. Access should be a privilege, not a right. You must create one. Ritual of disinterest. This isn't ghosting. This is social engineering of absence. You must disappear in a calculated way, not out of weakness, but strategically. False withdrawal, it is a war tactic that forces the enemy to reveal their position. When you withdraw from social engagement, whether digital or physical, you force people to ask themselves, where is he? What is he doing? Absence creates value and generates speculation. Speculation is the seed of fear and attraction. They don't know if you're in ruins or building an empire. Uncertainty consumes them. Use disinterest as a test of loyalty. Whether you're cultivating allies or assessing a lover, withdrawal is essential. Observe who desperately craves your attention, who tries to fill the void you've left. These are the people you control. Observe who barely notices your absence. These are the people you should watch closely. They don't need you, and therefore represent potential. Threat. Disinterest is a filter. It separates the parasites who want their energy from predators who respect their independence. Never justify your absence. Silence is the explanation. When you return with renewed strength. You don't return apologizing. You return with the air of someone who has been engaged in something of critical importance that is beyond their comprehension. The territory, your time is sacred. Defend it with your absence. The man who is always occupied with trivial things is a slave. The man who disappears and returns in silence is a master. A silent war, it is won by whoever controls the flow of information and the perception of scarcity. Be the rare resource. Your reptilian brain, it demands an immediate reaction. That's what makes it socket. When someone attacks you, whether with an insult, betrayal, or provocation, your first reaction is to defend yourself or retaliate immediately. This is when you are weakest, with your adrenaline high and your prefrontal cortex switched off. A law of non-delayed reaction, it nullifies that primitive impulse. You never react in the heat of the moment. You absorb the attack Register the offense and store it in a cold chamber of calculation. Time is your weapon. When you delay your response, you gain several advantages. First, you allow your opponent's emotions to run their course. They expect immediate confrontation. They've prepared for your outburst. When it doesn't come, they become disoriented. Secondly, you allow the audience to forget the initial offense and start focusing on your movement. Third, and most crucially, you transform reaction into strategy. An immediate counterattack is a street fight. A cold, calculated counterattack delivered a week, a month, or even a year later is an execution. You must wait for the moment when your attack will cause maximum damage and minimum risk. Ready you. The cold counterattack. It's never emotional. It's surgical. It strikes at the most vulnerable point of your enemy, be it their reputation, their financial power, or their support base. Predator, wait for the confrontation. You hand it over. Ruin during moments of calm. This signals dominance absolute. It signals that you are not reactive, but deliberate. You are not responding to them. You are ending them. The waiting time between the offense and the retaliation should be used to gather data, map out your weaknesses, and ensure that when the blow comes, it cannot be traced back to the initial offense. The blow should appear accidental, a logical consequence of your enemy's own behavior. Never waste anger in the heat of the moment. Freeze it and use it as ammunition for your next move. Silent war. Revenge is a dish best served cold. In 2026, it's a dish you serve as a newspaper article or a silent investigation. Machiavelli taught the art of appearance. In 2026, that means mastering what you know. Yes. In the world of algorithmic surveillance, the man who tries to be noticed is doomed to slavery. The man who tries to be invisible is doomed to paranoia. Law 8 is more subtle. You shouldn't be invisible. You should be the blind spot of the machine. The surveillance system and the hierarchy humans are designed to look for patterns of success and failure. They seek the peak and the valley. Their strategy is to occupy the perpetual middle ground. You must be good enough to be indispensable, but never good enough to be a threat, obviously. You should be average enough not to be noticed, but never average enough to be dismissed. This is the engineering of the void. In the workplace, for example, deliver 80% of your potential. The remaining 20% is your energy reserve and your margin for error. If you deliver 100%, you become a target for tyrant archetype. He will see him as a rival. If you're always at 80%, you're the reliable soldier. You're needed, but not someone to be envied. In social settings, actively mingle. Be the face everyone recognizes, but the name no one can immediately recall. Avoid the spotlight, but ensure you're always in the room where decisions are made. You are the background static, the white noise. The predator, you seek fast movement and bright color. You are gray, predictable, boring. The blind spot, it's the place where surveillance fails. It's the place where you can maneuver without the pressure of external observation. While their rivals are expending energy on performance of dominance, you are accumulating real power. They are fighting on the surface. You are building tunnels. You're not hiding. You're becoming the infrastructure. Power isn't about being the king. Power is about being the drain the king needs to survive. Be the blind spot, and you'll be the only one who sees the whole game. The Predator Own or Chaos Toe expose their weaknesses. The psychological warfare strategist uses the controlled Chaos Toe, expose the weaknesses of others. In times of peace, alliances are fragile and enemies are cautious. In times of crisis, masks fall and people reveal their true selves. Ego. You must master the art of creating small crises, not destructive crises that engulf you in ruin, but stress crises that force their allies and rivals to make quick decisions under pressure. An artificial crisis, it's your behavioral laboratory. You can create a crisis by fabricating rumors, introducing a small threat has hierarchy, or simply by creating an artificial scarcity of a valuable resource. Observe the reaction. The coward retreats. The parasite, it tries to cling to you. The fool panics. The enemy reveals his defense tactics. The controlled chaos, it serves a threefold purpose. 1. Stress test. You see who supports you when the ground shakes. 2. Redirection. The focus of attention of predator. It moves toward crisis far from its true intentions. 3. Opportunity of dominance. By resolving the crisis you yourself created, you present yourself as the only pillar of stability. You don't want the chaos just like that. You want that moment when, after the shock, everyone looks to you for direction. The price of a small, controlled crisis is always less than the invaluable knowledge you gain about the human nature of your targets. Silent War is overcome by the person who writes the drama's script, even if they appear to be just a calm spectator. Gratitude is a volatile and unreliable emotion. It's an illusion that signals weakness by giving moral power to the debtor. Machiavelli taught that men are more easily offended by those they love than by those they fear. Kindness and help create the expectation of more help, and ultimately, resentment. When you armor strengthens someone, you are planting the seeds of your own betrayal. A contract of ingratitude, it's a brutal principle. Never do a favor that can't be used against the recipient. If you need strength in an ally, ensure that he remains dependent on you in a crucial way. Your help should never be a gift of freedom. It should be a loan with hidden interest. If you elevated someone in hierarchy, you must ensure that your advancement is directly linked to your shadow, to a secret or a weakness that only you know. When the ally becomes too strong, when he begins to represent a threat to your territory, you don't attack him directly. You simply remove the foundation that he secretly laid. Cut off the finger you helped grow. This is done through narrative control. If you arm with information, you can leak the origin of that information, turning it into a puppet. If you saved him from a ruin in financial matters, you could accidentally let this information circulate. The world will see his downfall as a personal failure. You will see it as the fulfillment of a long-term contract. True mastery lies not in making friends. It lies in creating dependents who understand that their survival is an extension of yours. Dominance. The predator, he doesn't accept gratitude, he demands it. Submission perpetual, disguised as loyalty. People are not destroyed by force alone. They are destroyed by the corrosion of their own reality. The reptilian brain, your enemy, thrives on certainty. Certainty about who is friend, who is foe, and what the rules are. Territory. Your Lawit is to introduce the psychic infection from doubt in their targets. You don't need to attack them. You need to make them attack themselves. Plant the seeds of paranoia in your closest allies. This isn't done with direct accusations. It's done through casual questions and ambiguous comments. Example: it's interesting how it always appears at the exact moment you commit an error, or I don't trust anyone who tries so hard to be transparent. The goal is simple: to force the target to question the ground beneath their own feet. They will begin to see threats where they don't exist and spending all their energy monitoring their own circle. The erosion of certainty. It is lethal because it disintegrates the ability to make decisions. A man who trusts no one around him, including himself, is paralyzed. He cannot concentrate on the predator real. Are you using the shadow? It's them against them. You're poking at the insecurities they try to hide from themselves. Paranoia is contagious. If you can make a leader doubt their second in command, soon the entire organization will be consumed by fear and distrust. While they are in chaos inside, you are in controlled chaos observing from the outside. Power isn't about attacking their structure. It's about making their structure implode from within. The master of silent war, he doesn't destroy his enemies physically. He forces them to self-destruct. In 2026, morality is a tool of submission is to control the hierarchy. The world tries to force you to take a rigid moral stance. They want you to defend causes, to be the guardian of an ideology. It's a trap. By becoming the moral guardian, you become predictable. You become vulnerable to attacks of hypocrisy. You take on the burden of being perfect, which is impossible.